Today we are joined by Dennis McGinnis, Product Support Specialist. With that, I would like to welcome Dennis.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone for participating for this webinar. So as Sharon mentioned, this is an overview for the new functions that 1.3 brings to the table. However, I also want to still cover over the common tools that Cipher has continued to provide, so everyone's familiar with some of these features if they have not been exposed to them yet. So I'd like to start off with the dashboard over here on our upper left-hand corner. The dashboard allows a user to go ahead and create a screen that shows all the data that they see pertinent to their everyday operations. To expedite the setup of a dashboard, we have created different types of gadgets. And the first one I like to talk about is the site gadget. Now you can tell each gadget by the upper left-hand icon. The site gadget to start with allows us to create a visual aid of each particular site very quickly. By just selecting the site out of the site list, it automatically fills in a level, velocity, and flow rate data set. Additionally, in the lower left-hand corner of the site gadget, you will see a timestamp, which basically shows the last time this site pushed in. This one pushed in 13 minutes ago, as well as the voltage that the batteries reported at the time of that last push. So Apple Tree showing we're almost at 13 volts here. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll notice that I have an alarm gadget, where some of the other ones I don't. Because Apple Tree is in alarm right now, I have a small red hue around this site gadget to allow me to draw attention, to allow me to notice that this site is an alarm. And you can notice I have 481 alarms in this particular one. Now I'm doing that because I use this as a demo. This is our demo site. And I like to keep these alarms around to show this little red hue around them. With that, in the upper right-hand corner to finish off the site gadget, by clicking on this, I have a few options. I can tell it to when to refresh this screen to get me more data. I have a manual button to do that as well. Also, I can change the amount of time that's being displayed. In this case, I have last 72 hours, but I can choose between these options to show the amount of data in that graph. This shortcut allows me to jump to that site information, which we're going to get to shortly, as well as a quick graph shortcut. This will create a graph with these parameters already filled in for you. And of course, finally, if you want to get rid of the gadget, you can delete it here. All right. The next gadget I'd like to point out is the graph gadget. The graph gadget allows us to create a graph outside the constraints of what the site gadget gives us. So in this case, I've created a graph under the analysis screen, which we'll show later. I created a graph for downtown and I created a scatter plot. Here you can see in Park View, I created another one with flow rate and totals. I put the total as a bar graph, and I put a line in my flow rate just to show that I can put a physical line in there. But the idea here is if I want to go outside the constraints of the site gadget of the level, velocity, and flow rate, I have the ability to put whatever I want in here, whether it be pH or rain or combine two sites together to make a graph. So if I have something that it gets a little more fancier, I can make a graph for that. It takes a little more time because I have to actually go make it. But once I've made it and saved it, then in this site, in the graph gadget, I can see every gadget for each of those sites that I've created. And then that will populate that graph gadget with that graph. All right, the next step I'd like to show is let's move over to the new gadgets, which is the alarm gadget, the silent gadget, and the voltage gadget. So to start off with the alarm gadget, going back to Apple Tree, you notice I had this little red hue, as I mentioned, and the alarms in the lower right-hand corner. Well, I have 3 sites in alarm right here. I have Apple Tree, I have downtown, I have Buck Road. So I don't have to go ahead and view all my site gadgets looking for red hues to find out what's an alarm. The alarm gadget allows me to place all of them in one screen at one time. Here you can see Apple Tree has the 481 alarms that are active. And you'll notice that Buck Road has the green resolve icon. Basically, the difference here is when we have an alarm, it's going to take 2 steps to clear them out. The first step is to go ahead and click on the acknowledge the alarm. By hitting that button there and hitting acknowledge, it will change the icon to this green one, saying that basically I'm looking into it. If that alarm was because I have low voltage or I have a dirty sensor or whatever the case of why I have that alarm set up, I can now say, I'm going to look into it by hitting the acknowledge button. It'll turn this into a green icon. So that way, when other people log in, they can see the green saying, oh, someone's already looking into this. I can space it off now because I feel confident someone's going to take care of it. Now, once it is taken care of, if you click on this icon, you have an option to actually resolve the icon, the acknowledgement. So hitting OK there will clear the alarm completely. So Buck Road technically still is an alarm until it's resolved. If I want to see what the alarms are, though, if I don't know what the alarm is, if I click on the name, the site name, it will actually jump me over to the site screen, which we're going to get to later, and to the events. So under events, it does show alarms. It also shows programming changes. It shows sampler events. Any type of event that's being recorded in the meter is listed here. But I can choose what kind of event I want to filter for. In this case, a data event is for the alarms because I have a data happening. In this case, you can see I have a low-level alarm here. I have another one. It's just a test alarm. That's why there's so many alarms, is I just have a lot of test ones in here. But I can filter those. And by clicking on this, it'll filter only data alarms here. Now, that's all it was showing in the first place. But the point is if you do have a big mix of different types of events, you can filter them there. Well, we'll get back to this screen later. Let's go ahead and back to the dashboard, finish these off. So that's the alarm gadget. You can choose just particular sites if you want, or just using all allows you to type in, it'll monitor all of the sites. And if they come to alarm, they'll show up here. Moving on to the silent alarm. Again, it is monitored by the server. If a site is programmed to push in at a certain amount of time, and you can put in a threshold to say, if it has not pushed in within this time, I want to know about it. So a lot of my sites here, I have a 24-hour. They have to push in at least once a day. And if they don't, I need to hear about it. And that is the maximum amount of push you can put into a meter. A day is the most, or the farthest out you can take it. So if I have a site setting up to push every hour and it has not pushed in within 24 hours, I definitely want to know about that. Maybe my batteries are dead, maybe I didn't pay the phone bill, etc. So that's what this site alarm does here. You'll notice it creates a yellow hue around it. And if you have that yellow hue, that just means that site is not pushed in within that given time. And you can also acknowledge that the same way we do with the alarms. All right, finally, the voltage gadget. The voltage gadget up here in the upper right-hand corner I have here shows the voltage for each one of my sites when they last pushed in. So instead of going around and looking at each one of these site gadgets to see what the voltages are, I can actually have them listed here. I can sort them from highest to lowest. You'll notice Pioneers Park here has NA. That means it's AC powered and it's not recording the voltage. However, if I did tell it to record the voltage, it would show up here. But because this one's an AC powered unit, they're not recording the voltage, so that voltage is not being pushed in. All right, and then finally, the Note Gadget. The Note Gadget allows me to put any type of note in here. In this case, at the very top, I typed in the site name, and I put in bring a battery, bring some shovels. One thing I want to point out is we do have the ability to do hyperlinks now. So if you click on the weather icon I made here, I made a hyperlink to the weather channel for Lincoln, Nebraska. And this allows me, as an example, to see what the weather is. If I have a storm front coming through or what the temperatures are going to be like, that's all listed here at this website. So it's just a quick little link to get there. As another example, I put my software updates screen here. So here it just jumps me to the Teledyne Isco software update screen so I can quickly get the newest updates for my meter as needed. All right, so in the upper right or upper left corner here of the dashboard, you'll notice we also now allow, well, we moved the multiple dashboards across the top so it's easier to see from previous versions. And so you can see I have a demonstration dashboard here as well. What I want to point out is each dashboard is very unique to each user. So every user's dashboards can be completely different, and it's not affecting other people's views or their dashboards. So you can have a number of dashboards across the top simply by hitting plus and creating a new dashboard and give it a name and start creating new gadgets. In this plus button, you'll notice we now have a dashboard configuration. So what this allows me to do is if I want to share a particular dashboard, all I simply have to do is move it from private to shared, and it will add that dashboard down here into the shared group, in which case now I can make a copy of any one of those dashboards. Don't need to share that again. Once you make a copy of it, again, it is a copy, so you can now tweak it and change it, and it's not going to affect the original shared dashboard you got it from. So it becomes yours. You can even change the name of it if you don't want it to be the same name. This does allow people who are more comfortable with dashboards to create them and then share them with other people who just want to kind of hit the ground running. At this point, I do want to point out our help screen in the upper right-hand corner. Up here, if you notice, we have an option here for release notes. This does show all the new notes for each one of our versions of Cipher, and it kind of goes through each one of the new things that it brings to the table. Also, I want to point out the feedback option. The feedback option is a really nice way of you guys giving us feedback. If you see a problem, something isn't working right, you can click this feedback option, give a little summary of the problem, and then you can give some details. If you can see it on the screen, the actual issue, you can include the screen capture with it. And when you submit it, it goes right to our department where we can try to address it right away. And if we can't, we can move it on to the software developers to look heavily into it. Also, if you see a function that you would like to see in Cipher, you can add that in there as well and just say, you know, this is something that I'd like to see. And so it's like a feature request. We can go ahead and see if we can't add those features in here with our new deployments. So that's a really easy way of getting a hold of us and talking to us about anything you see that's not working or a feature development you would like to see added. Now, I will say if you do run into particular problems with a particular site of yours, something doesn't look right, please contact us directly so we can work one-on-one with that particular issue. Where the feedback's more of a generic, this isn't working, this is something I'd like to see. If you have a particular site issue, we would like you to go ahead and still contact us at our customer service group so we can walk through that with you. All right, so that finishes off the dashboard. I'm going to move on to the map screen. Map screen's easy enough to look at. You can see all the different sites we have available. They are color coded just like the alarm. So if it's an alarm, it's red. If it didn't push in, it's in yellow. If it's green, it means it's working just fine. If you click on an icon, it does zoom in on it. And we have some quick graphs again, shortcuts, just like we saw with the dashboard. I have the ability to go ahead and create some graphs very quickly based upon this site information. Over on the far right is a shortcut to jump to the site information, which is where we're going next. Okay, so on the site screen, the main thing to point out here is you have a list of all of your sites that are in the database are on this screen. As you move over the site screen, you'll notice a drop-down card that gives us some more options. So let's cover over what we've got on the screen here. Right below the site name, you'll notice a timestamp. This is the same as the dashboard. This is the last time the site had pushed in, but we just represent it differently. Instead of number of hours or minutes it last pushed in, we actually give you a time date stamp of when it last pushed in. And again, what the voltage was at that time. If the site is an alarm, as Apple Tree is, you can see it creates alarm gadget or alarm icon, I should say, over to the right here. And then I can also jump to see what those alarms are by clicking on that, which is that event screen we were talking about earlier. Below, as you notice, as you float over, below it drops a little site card down. And here we have a number of options as well. The first one being the tenant. The tenant allows us to group sites and users. So only particular users, when they log in, can only see particular sites. So it's a way of filtering to allow only people have access to those sites to see them. As long as those site names are listed with the exact same tenant, then that user will see it. Now, in this case, my account is an admin, so I get to see all the sites. The next icon over allows me to activate or deactivate a site. This allows me to take a site offline to make room for a new site that's coming in. And you'll notice up here on this icon here, I do have a site deactivated just for test reasons or for demonstrations here. So you can see any sites that are deactivated, but you can filter those to get those out of the way so you're only looking at the sites that are active in this case. Again, some more shortcuts to make some graphs, which we'll show later. A map shortcut just jumps you to the map screen and zeroes in on the Apple Tree location in this example. Then, of course, I have the ability to delete this site. I should warn you, if you do delete the site, it will remove all data from the website. We will not have any data for you. So if you are cleaning house, make sure you back up your data first and or have it available someplace for you before you delete it, because we will not be able to retrieve that data back out. All right. Before I jump into the site screen itself, a few shortcuts up here. I have a search option in case I have a lot of sites I can type in a name and it can filter it out a little quicker for you. I have a different sort by options. I can sort by the site name by default, which is what I'm doing now. I can do it by tenant, anything that's an alarm, what the last voltage was. And then of course I can sort high to low, A to Z, based upon what I have selected over here. This allows me to merge data in. If I have site data from a third party or maybe some rain data from a website, I can import that in here as well. Should mention that will take up a site name or one of your site licenses when you bring data in as a new site with the import data. Sorry, that's the import data bringing new data in. So that can take up another site name if it doesn't already exist. The merge allows me to take two sites and merge them in case, let's say I had to change the name from Apple Tree to something else, like the manhole number. So now I have Apple Tree and manhole 28 in here. You can merge those two sites together, and then you could delete one of the sites that you no longer need. All right, so let's get to the site screen itself. So in the site screen, there's a few new things I want to show you with 1.3. First off, I want to point out that we now support the DuraTracker meter. So in this case here, you can see the DuraTracker is our new flow meter that's coming out. And I actually have this site coming in just to point out that we do support the new DuraTracker flow meter. To talk a little more about this particular site screen though, we'll start at the general tab here. Upper left-hand corner shows me a quick view of this site on the map. If I click on this, I can jump to the map screen. You can see I can put attachments here. I have some site photos of this particular install here located. Over here, I've entered in some address information as well as a manhole number. You can see this particular site's active, and the last time I pushed in, it's at almost 14 volts. This site pushed in 10 minutes ago, but as I mentioned, if it does not push in within 1 day, I will get an alarm, a silent alarm, the little yellow hue around it. This particular site does not have a call-in window, but if it did, it would display here. And then I can put the coordinates of the site here. This is the coordinates it's going to use to display it on the map. So you do have to manually put those in, but once they're in there, it does show up on the map. Down below, if it belongs to any tenant, this one does not. It's part of the global group. And I can add any comments I want to it as well. If I have it belonging to a group, which I'll show in a moment, it'll show if it belongs to any groups as well. Events, this site doesn't have any events, so it's empty, but if it did have some alarms or some programming changes, it would show up in here. And again, I wanted to show you the device again. You can see I do have the DuraTracker listed. Some other cool sites I want to show you is the new ability in the 2100s. So Pioneers Park here is a 2100 meter. Same information as the last. You will notice this one does have a call-in window. So it turns on at 6 o'clock a.m. every day. It does not have any events, no alarms. However, its devices is a 2100. And you'll notice that the 2100 now, we have the ability to see what its configuration is. So in the past, before this release, you did not have a way of seeing the pipe size or how that 2100 was programmed. Now we have that ability to open this up. I can click on this and I can get all kinds of information. On the flow rate, I can see this program for GPM. It is set up for a round pipe. And you can see the last time it had any type of data coming in. You have all that information now in here, as well as total flow and how it's set up to work. You've got your velocity, signal, and spectrum, how they're set up to record. So basically, we've allowed you to kind of look at how the 2100 now is set up in the field, because in the past, there was no way to get that information here. You had to have it downloaded into Flowlink to get it. So we're kind of bridging that gap to get that information here in Cipher as well. I'll take this opportunity to show another feature we have in the data sets. We have the ability to move data sets around. Now, in this case, I only have one module, so this is kind of a bad example, but let me get to a site that does have multiple. Buck Road, I believe it has more than one sensor. Yeah, this one does. So this signature meter has multiple sensors here, and you can see I have a 360 laser sensor with its level and velocity, and I have a 350 level and velocity. What we've now added is the ability to move these around. When I make a quick graph from the dashboard or map, it pulls in the level and velocity and flow rate information based upon the order of this data set structure. So if I want the 350 level and velocity to be chosen when I make a quick graph, I need to move these above the 360. And so now, as long as this is the first level and this is the first velocity, these are the two that we pulled in during a quick graph. Now, I don't want that. I do want the laser level and velocity first. So I'm going to put them in the top order. But this is something new we've added because we've had some situations where people were using the shortcuts, but every time they make a shortcut, you get the 360 level, but then you get the 350 velocity, and then they'd have to manually change the velocity over. So this fixes that. If you run into a problem where the things aren't pumping into those quick graphs properly, you can move those around in the data set here in the right order so it populates correctly. Another cool thing we've added has to do with the laser. So I'm going to show you that here with the Gallagher site. You'll notice here, this is a laser sensor. And what I wanted to point out is now under the event screen, we actually have diagnostics information being pulled in from the meter. So if you have a submerged probe and you have a laser, the first of the three, you'll always get one for the submerged probe and you'll get two for the laser. So the submerged probe in this case is the 350 submerged probe. It's not underwater. I can see I have no velocity, no signal, no spectrum when this is taken. So it's not submerged. So I'm not going to get any readings from there. The next one's going to be my laser diagnostic. So this one's going to be based on the frequency here. This is my velocity. So this helps me see when we're doing troubleshooting remotely, we can log in and see what the last diagnostics was. And I can see my velocity bump right here. Finally, the third one would be my 360 distance. So here I can see this is my distance, my ultrasonic bump from the surface. I've got a couple little echoes here, but you can also see I have my dead bands listed here as well. And so you can see this is my 360 velocity or level sensor listed here. So we now pulled those diagnostics in from the 360, which was only supported in the past via Flowlink. You could only get to those diagnostics on Flowlink. Well, now we'll be able to assist you better by being able to see that information here on Cipher, to look at those diagnostics, to find out why is your velocity not working. So that is a really nice feature we've added, I think, with 1.3. I think that's it for what was inside the site. I will point out at the top here, I've got groups. Groups basically allow us to move sites into different groups to help us organize different sites into different areas. So here I have a northeast flow study. I've dragged some sites into it. Here I've got a southwest. I've dragged one site into it. So when I'm looking or doing filtering, that's where groups is nice. If I have a large number of sites, I can break them up. The export function now allows us to export multiple sites at the same time. So I don't have to do one site at a time. Now I can hit multiple sites. I can pick a time range of how much data I want. Also, if I don't want every single parameter, I can use this drop down and I can uncheck boxes of things I don't need in my export. As you can see down below here, it's removing things as I'm clicking on them. And I can do that for each one of these sites individually, what I want in that export. And when I hit that button there, it'll export out as a CSV with all that information from all those sites. All right, so moving on to the alarms tab. The alarms tab, the first screen, the list, it just basically shows every single alarm that's in the database. And you can see Apple Tree, which I do have set up to alarm frequently for demonstration purposes. It's really taking a lot of the real estate here at the beginning. You can see I have over 2,000 well, actually 2,806 alarms down here. Now I'm only showing to play 10 at a time. I can go 50 here. I can actually sort this out to a type of alarm, what side I want the alarm from, the type, if I want a program or diagnostics, what kind of event. If I want an alarm that's going to be data, because it's being alarmed upon a particular parameter, in this case I have a low level alarm. So I can do this type of filtering and hit the button and you can see it filters it out, and it lowered my number quite a bit. And so there's a way of getting some of the, if you even know what day the alarm happened, you can put that in here as well. Settings, this is where you put the alarm settings, where you set it up in the server. So here I have a number of alarms. I have a low level alarm here. Now, me being logged in under my account, if I want to subscribe to these alarms, that means I want to get an email or I want to get a text when these alarms happen. If I'm not interested in those alarms, I can unsubscribe from them. Any alarm that I've made, I have the ability to delete. Any alarm somebody else made, you notice I do not have the ability to delete that. I don't have to subscribe to it, but I can't delete it either. So this is where you create your alarms in the server itself to take off and give that little red hue around the site. There's a little plus button. There's a little wizard here. You can type in which alarm, what site you want. You can give it a name of the alarm, and you can type in the site you want. So in this case, apple tree, and I want based on level, drag level over here when my level is greater than 12 inches, and give it a name, apple tree alarm, and then create it. Now I don't want to create it because I have so many alarms already, but it's pretty simple to set up an alarm condition. All right, let's go to analysis. So analysis is, well, basically our graphs and tables and reports. And so under here, it's going to show every single graph that I have created in here. And if it's got data, it'll show up in this area, but this is basically all the graphs that I've created. If I want to jump into a graph, I can simply click on it and it will jump me to that graph information that I've made previously. So it's a quick, easy way of getting in there. Now, one cool thing I want to show you that 1.3 brings again is we now have introduced the ability to create a text box. So if I'm trying to point out a particular event, by going into the edits mode, selecting my point, I can add a text note here and say, I don't know, peak, or I could give it a value 39.6, whatever it is, and hit save. You'll notice now I have a text box there. I can do that with any one of these parameters, and it does save it right into that data. So that is a new function of the 1.3. We've now introduced text boxes. Getting back to analysis though, if you have pre-made graphs, they're all listed right here. If you want to make a new one, you simply hit this little plus button down here, and it allows you to create a graph based upon the information that you want. And if you want to go ahead and click, it creates a new graph over on the right. If you drag it into the same pane, it'll add it to that pane and create another y-axis for you to keep it separate. If you want it in a different pane, I'll grab this total flow, just click on it, and it'll add it into the second pane below it. I can also add more panes or subtract more panes. My total flow is only recording once every 24 hours, so I've only got one data point there. So yeah, that's the analysis screen, quick and dirty there. Moving on to reports. Under reports now, by using the little wizard down here, you can create any report that you want. I have a list of reports pre-made. The one thing I do want to show you that 1.3 brought to the table is this was a request. I'm going to click on this PDF here for this report. You'll notice that now we've added not only what the minimum and maximum values were, we had those in the past. We didn't know when they occurred. We did not have the timestamp of when that minimum occurred in that time range. So now we actually have a date and timestamp of when that occurs, so you can go find it in your data that actually value happened at this date and time, and look through your data that way. So this is a new feature that 1.3 brings to the table, is adding the min max time values at the bottom of your reports. So that's a pretty key feature that we were getting a lot of people asking about. All right, so along with reports, if you create a report and you make it a template, by having that template created, you can actually now, I can take like this monthly reports and I can substitute any site in with an existing monthly report, and it fills in the information that I already had in there. And then it allows me to go ahead and tweak anything I want to. If I want to change something, I can. Otherwise, if I hit next right through it, it will go ahead and create that report based upon that information. Additionally, by having a template created for monthly or daily, under the scheduled reports, now I can actually have that template emailed out to me on a given time. So let me show you here. If I go ahead and create Dennis report, let's call the same description. This is going to allow me to go ahead and have that site. Let's say I want Capitol Parkway, but I want to use that same monthly totals that I had in that template. So it's going to substitute all that information I need for my monthly totals with the Capitol Parkway site. I want that sent to me as well as a couple other people in here. And maybe I got Jimmy across the hall that's not even part of Cipher. It can grab these names, by the way, by the user database in the Cipher accounts. So all those names are listed here. If I have somebody outside that range, maybe Jimmy doesn't have access to Cipher, but I want him to get these reports to him, I can hand type his email here, and that will take it and that will send it to Jimmy as well. I can tell it when I want these reports sent out. So I could pick weekly, monthly. If I choose monthly as an example, I can say I want it the first of every month, or maybe I want it the first Tuesday of every month. And then I could say I want it at 8 o'clock in the morning. So now the first Tuesday of every month, that report will be mailed out to me and Kaushal and Marius here. And then I can create that schedule, and you'll notice that schedule is then in the list, and that's how often those emails go out. That pretty much handles the 1.3 features along with Cipher as a whole. I guess the key things I want to say that, to break it down, we added the ability to use the diagnostics from the laser, so that diagnostics information is there. The DuraTracker is supported. We have the 2100 configuration information, how it's programmed, now added. We allow you to drag and change the location of those levels and velocities in order for the quick graph type stuff to graph properly under the sites. So if I use one of these shortcuts, it puts them in the right order. The analysis or the graph, we added the ability to add a text box in there. So that's new. As well as in the reports, we added when those min and max times occurred within the report. So those are really the key features that 1.3 brings to the table. And I'm going to now pass this right on over to Sharon. And thank you guys for your time.
Well, thank you, Dennis, for sharing your expertise. We would like to now open our webinar up for Q&A. If you have any questions, please be sure to utilize the Q&A function within Zoom. Daryl Kuda, one of our business development managers, is also with us today, and he will answer your questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Dennis. Another great presentation. Covered a lot of topics there. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to use that Q&A function. We did have a couple from the earlier session that I wanted to share with you. And one of the questions that they asked were, can you use Cipher with other equipment, say like magnetic flow meters? So there are a couple ways that you can do that. You can essentially use our signature flow meter and an analog input to then log the data and get that into Flowlink Cipher by either importing the data or having it push via modem. And then the other way, if you have your instrument has Modbus output, then we can also log Modbus data into the signature meter. And then that would allow us to bring that into Flowlink and Flowlink Cipher. Now, if you wanted to do it manually, if you had the data in a CSV file, we can import that. There was a function within Cipher under the site screen. You can just select import, choose the CSV file, and import that in, and have all the functionality Dennis was just showing you. And so if you do have additional questions, I'm going to answer a few more here, but yeah, feel free to email Dennis or myself, or even Sharon. She was our host, and we'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Another question that came in is, if I'm exporting the data, can I change the order of the columns? And if you remember when Dennis was showing you under the devices how you could actually click and drag the different parameters around, so you can do the same thing for the export. So if you wanted, total flow, then flow rate and level, you just drag the order under the devices, and when you export the data, then that will export it in that exact same format. And one last question that came in is, somebody wanted to know, how can I try the Flowlink Cipher? That's a great question, because we do offer a free 30-day trial with that. And what you need to do is just contact us or contact your local representative. If you do not know who that is, go to the ISCO website at isco.com or teledyneisco.com, and there's a link for Find Your Rep. It just asks for your zip code. It'll tell you who your local representative is, and they would be happy to set you up with a trial version of the Flowlink Cipher. Well, it looks like no. Oh, one more question came in. And a question came up about, can I rent the Flowlink Cipher? It's a great question. Yes, you can. So if you know you have just a short study, by all means, you can rent the software for a couple of weeks, a month, a year, whatever you need. And if you need to add more sites to it, we can easily add additional sites.
Well, thank you, Daryl, for answering those questions. We will leave it open just a little while longer. I don't know, Daryl, did you want to take over the screen and show anything else that might be beneficial for our audience to know?
Yeah, I could share my screen and show those couple of things I was talking about. Let's see. All right, so the couple of things that I had mentioned before about changing the order of your sites. So when you open up your site, you can go to the device tab, and this applies to when you're changing the order of the parameters on your default screen, as well as exporting the data. And so you could just go over to this your devices tab, and then when you click on the data set, then it shows your different sites. So if I wanted to have flow rate first, then level and velocity and input voltage, I just change the order. And then when I select to export the data, it will now be in that new format. The other thing I wanted to show you was, this is the ISCO website. So teledyneisco.com. And over here on the right is Find Your Rep. And you just need to select flow meter, put in your zip code, and submit. And this will give you the contact information for your local representative. And one last thing, I just wanted to throw in there, for those of you that are not aware of it, we do have the ISCO online store. So that allows you to order all your accessories, replacement parts, anything you may need for your samplers and flow meters, just on our standard ISCO page, and we're looking for the online store, and then it gives you options for sampler packages you can pick from, flow meters. So we got a lot of great information out there. So with that, I think we're finished for today, and yeah, feel free to reach out for us, and thanks for joining us today.